I don't normally buy anything off my favorite online marketplace, and the reason is I typically find plenty of free items being given away. However, there are times I find something very interesting for sale that I'll consider buying, and this happens to be one of those items. Although I've never had one covered in this much sawdust before, but I have to admit it was definitely worth the price I paid for it. What's up everyone, and thank you for stopping by. Today's project is this very dirty and dusty Toro trimmer, and the problem is that I don't know anything about it because I just bought it after seeing an online ad. The seller was only asking $5 for this thing, which made me believe this thing was not fixable and that I would only be using it for parts. Now, with everything going on, the prices of items we buy have dramatically increased to a very unpleasant amount, and that includes off-brand, generic, knockoff parts from overseas. So if I can buy a whole trimmer to use for parts, I think that's a great deal, especially if the trimmer was very affordable. As you can see by its date of manufacture, this trimmer has been around for a very long time, but that doesn't mean it's been running all that time, or at least I hope not. And if it has been running for most of that time, it might mean the engine could be worn out and it may not be able to run again without a full rebuild. It's also worth noting that the shaft doesn't seem to be like any other previous Toros I've had a chance to work on. As you can see, it doesn't seem to be a ferrous material because my magnet isn't attracted to it, so it might be aluminum. In contrast, the bracket for the shield is definitely mild steel because my magnet is attracted to it. The only reason this is interesting is because this feature will make the trimmer easier to use because the aluminum shaft is a lot lighter than a normal steel shaft. The first thing I want to do is to confirm that the engine isn't worn out, and the easiest way to do that is to slowly pull on the rope and feel how much the engine is fighting back. And as you can see by how much the trimmer is moving around on the table, it's fighting back quite a bit, which means that this engine is more than likely healthy enough to run. So I'm fairly certain that we can get it working again because the most important part, the engine, is in decent shape. Now if you pull on the rope and there's only a small amount of resistance from the engine, I would consider using a compression tester on it to find out how worn out it might be. Before I continue with the diagnostic on this trimmer, I want to give it a good cleaning, that way we don't get dirt or debris in places where it's not supposed to be, like in the carb or the fuel tank. Then in the next video for this trimmer, we'll try to fix whatever we find wrong with it. By the looks of it, it seems like this trimmer has been sitting in a cabinetry shop for most of its life because it's literally covered in sawdust. It shouldn't be too difficult to get clean, but there are a few places that might give us some issues. The first place is the business end, which is the deflector. Now the grass clippings have dried to a point that we'll need to use a scraper to clean it, but if we do that, we could damage the plastic. Since the deflector isn't very big, I'm going to use hot water on it instead of cold water from the garden hose. This method works surprisingly well, and if I could do this with my mowers, it might save me a lot of time. Normally after getting it wet, I would then have to move away from this area to give it time to soak in, but when using hot water, I don't have to wait that long at all. Now, I still have to scrape the grass off of it, but I'm not having to push hard into it, so the chances of scratching it are a lot less. Once I get the top layer off, I'll then apply more hot water to it, and then I should be able to use a brush on it. I like using old brushes for this type of work because it's gentle and won't scratch stuff, but I can also put more pressure on it versus using a paintbrush. Besides, the bristles on the paintbrush are not meant to take this sort of abuse like an old toothbrush is, and if I wanted to apply a lot of pressure with the paintbrush, I would have to cut the bristles down to a length of less than ½ an inch, which I think is quite wasteful. As long as I don't have to clean a large area, I'm fine using the smaller brush. Now after rinsing the first area I've cleaned, you can see it looks really good, and that means I'll do the same process for the rest of it. Now I can hear someone saying that cleaning the underside of the deflector is idiotic because you don't see this part of it and it's just going to get dirty again. My answer is pretty simple, it's just my choice to clean it. Speaking about cleaning the areas you can see, once I've cleaned under the deflector, I'm now going to move to the top of it. There's no need to use hot water here unless you want to avoid using any sort of chemicals, which of course is your choice to make. But for right now, I'm going to use a concentrated citrus-based cleaner, which seems to work pretty well, just so long as you don't need to cut through any grease. If you want to use it as a degreaser, I would mix it with less water to make the solution a bit stronger. After the first round of scrubbing and rinsing, it looks like I need to do another round, which isn't surprising. If I wasn't filming this, I would probably rinse while scrubbing so I don't have to do this more than once, but for filming purposes, I'm rinsing once the scrubbing is done for dramatic effect. It looks like this Toro sticker is wanting to come off, which I did notice when I was scrubbing on it. If I get this trimmer working again, I'll have to remember to fix it so it doesn't come off. Since we're by the trimmer head, I'm also going to give it a quick clean. I don't really like this style because I think it puts too much of a load on the engine, which could affect its performance. However, I'm not going to replace it though, as I think it could be very useful in certain situations, but for around the yard trimming, I prefer a standard bump feed head with 2 strings. If you have an opinion about this style of trimmer head, I'd like to know about it and why you like it. Personally, I think it's harder to use because you have to keep replacing the string. After the head is clean, I'll then work my way up to the engine, and then once it's clean, I'll then try and give it a test start. Now, since we're talking about the engine and trying to start this trimmer, I do have some information about it. When I met up with the seller, he told me that it belonged to a friend of his who had left town, and he had been trying to contact him to see what he wanted to do with it, but he never contacted him back. Since he never heard back from him, he decided to keep it and use it, but he said he couldn't get it started, and that's why he's selling it. I had to meet up with the seller at a local gas station because he was meeting another person who was buying a different item. They were driving a very large SUV, so I didn't get any bad feelings about the exchange. Now, to be honest, even when it's a few dollars, I still pass on most of the items I find on the marketplace, and the reason is I'd rather not have to deal with the sellers. I prefer to drive by a location to pick up something for free and just forego the interaction. I know that sounds very antisocial of me, but it's just what I prefer. I know a price difference of only $20 to $40 doesn't sound like a lot, but for some consumers, when the price goes above that magical $199.99 price range and into the $200 category, it just puts some of them off, and I guess I feel the same way. So let me rephrase what I said earlier. For a residential trimmer that's between the price range of $150 to $199, I think it's a really good value. So if I can get this $5 used trimmer working again for not a lot of money, I think this project will be well worth it. I know some of you might be asking about fixing other affordable brands like Weed Eater or Homelight, and to be honest, although I think getting any trimmer working again for only a few dollars is well worth it, I don't like how some of them perform or even their build quality. To put it another way, if I had seen a Weed Eater brand trimmer on sale for only $5 on an online market, I would be very unlikely to go through the hassle of meeting up with the seller to buy it. But if they had marked it down to $0, I would definitely pick it up. I know it sounds like I'm making a big deal about a price difference of $5, but it's just how I see certain items. Some items are worth some effort, while others aren't worth my time or money. So what about higher priced items that I find? From what I said earlier, they should be worth my time, right? The answer is yes, but for the price, it would have to be worth the risk. Let's say it's a commercial Honda mower that didn't run and it's been sitting for several years. What's the most I would spend to get it? There would be other factors to consider, but I doubt I would offer more than $40 for it. The reason for such a low number is that I'm not comfortable risking more than that. Of all the trimmers that I've fixed on this channel that were my personal trimmer and not from my friends, family, or coworkers, only a small handful have not been free or given to me. I simply do not like buying items from the online markets, and the reason is, if you wait a while and you're lucky enough, you might find something that you want that's being given away for free. Of course, once you pick it up, you might have to fix whatever's broken on it, but if you search for videos on this platform, there's a really good chance that you'll find one that'll help you get it working again. But if you feel as though it's too difficult of a repair, just post it for sale and price it accordingly. Now, even though I can fix a fair amount of stuff that I find online, there are those items out there that are just too far gone to be fixed without throwing a ton of money at them. When I get something like that, I'll just put it on my own curb, post an ad saying free items on the curb, and wait for it to disappear. Who knows, maybe someone out there has a use for it, but as for me, I don't want to deal with it. The last area I'm going to clean is around the air filter base and the carb. I've mentioned it before, but I like cleaning the carb while it's still connected to the engine because I find it more convenient. Now, it looks like this air filter has seen better days and it's finally breaking down, so for right now, I'll just carefully remove it. If you're asking why I bothered to remove the air filter cover, it was to make filming a little easier. It also gives me more room to maneuver my brush. Before I started cleaning this trimmer, I thought it was going to be easy because I thought it was just sawdust, but it turns out to be a combination of fuel, dirt, and sawdust, which proved to be a bit more difficult, so I had to switch over from my normal citrus cleaner to a degreaser. So after about 20 minutes of cleaning, it looks a lot better, and it turns out this thing is in really good shape. I don't even see a lot of damage to the metal parts or even the plastics. Now, I'm not going to make you wait any longer, so I'm going to try and start it after putting some fuel into the carb's throat. So after a few pulls, it finally started and ran for a bit, which is great news. The best part is that it sounds really good, so there's an excellent chance that we should be able to get this trimmer working again. Hopefully we don't find any other issues with it, like a broken drive shaft or a bad gearbox. So in the next video on this trimmer, I'm going to put some fuel into the tank and see if it'll run on its own. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. I hope you enjoyed watching me clean, inspect, and share my experience getting this trimmer. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.